Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the International People and Culture Week 2026. Today, of course, we're flying into South America, or Latin America, as some of us like to call it. We've got a fantastic panel of speakers ready to bring you the regional focus on South America. We've got speakers from Chile, from Colombia, and from Mexico. And of course, David joining you from the UK, and I'm joining you from Delhi in India. This is truly a global panel, of course. This is the International People and Culture Week 2026. I know you've already joined us on some previous episodes so far, and thank you so much. Tell us where you're joining us from. Tell us what you do, who you are, and how you have tried to make people and culture everybody's business at the workplace. Because this is all about learning from each other. We want to hear your stories. So Ignacia was someone who joined us on the last episode of International People and Culture Week 2025, last season, sorry. She in fact still has the background there, as you can see it, a wonderful background that we had created. And so this year I said to Ignacia, we got to go further. We got to take it beyond you in South America. And she said, you know what? I'm going to go and bring in the next generation of people and culture, the next generation of HR, the future of HR is what we're going to bring onto the International People and Culture Week 2026. And here we are. So really excited to dive deep into this. Of course, the International People and Culture Week is brought to you by the People and Culture Institute, or the PCI. We have around over 600 members who have joined us from different parts of the globe. So if you're into people, culture, leadership, conflict resolution, this is the place to be. All you got to do is go to peopleprofessionals.org, and you'll get some more details in terms of how you can sign up. It's absolutely free. So please do join us. And if you can't find your way there, all you got to do is once again drop in an email at info@peopleprofessionals.org, and I shall help you with some more details. Now, IPCW is, of course, sponsored by the TCM Group, that is revolutionizing conflict resolution and coaching and leadership in UK and beyond. So once again, a big shout out to our sponsors, the TCM Group. And of course, the official media partner for the IPCW is the People Leader magazine. So once again, if you've not come across the People Leader magazine, we are going global with it. And of course, you can download a free copy. All you got to do is go to thepeopleleader.com. And we've got a fifth edition, I think, that's come out just earlier this afternoon. So it's all fresh, hot off the press. You got to get your copy of the People Leader magazine. I can't wait to dive into this conversation today. As I was saying, we have a fantastic panel. I want to quickly introduce you to them. Of course, they're going to share more information about their journeys with you. But a quick hello, of course, to Joaquin Munoz, who is joining, of course, from Chile. Joaquin, of course, is an organizational psychologist and right now the head of people and culture at Wheel the World. Thank you so much for joining us on this panel, Joaquin, and we're really looking forward to diving deep into these conversations with you. I also want to say hi to Natalia Cardenas, who of course joining us from Colombia. Natalia is an HR business partner at Alcon in Bogota in Colombia. And of course, she brings an expertise in talent development, human resources, leadership, and development as well. Thank you so much for joining us all the way from Colombia on this panel. I want to fly back into Chile because we got to say hi to Ignacia. For those of you who have not met her last year, she is, of course, joining us from Puerto Varas in Chile. And she's the director of people and culture at Kira Biotech. And of course, brings in expertise in talent management, acquisition, compensation, development, and culture. And of course, right now is leading Kira's agile, science-driven, and purpose-led approach there at the organization. So once again, thank you for joining us on this panel, Ignacia. And of course, I want to once again introduce you to our final panelist and very important panelist, Mauricio Norega, who's joining us from Mexico City. He's a recruiter, HR business partner, and HR advisor, and has previously held roles of an HR business partner at Notco. Mauricio, thank you so much for joining us all from Mexico. And anchoring the conversation today, as always, at the IPCW 2026 is David Little, who is, of course, president of the People and Culture Institute, the CEO of the TCM Group, the author of Transformational Culture, Managing Conflict, and the latest book, People and Culture, all published by Kogan Page and got rave reviews on them. Is also the editor of the People Leader magazine and, of course, the HR Most Influential 2025. So this is going to be, of course, a fun conversation, and I'm going to hand it to the host. David, the stage is all yours.
Jonathan, it's amazing to be back here. What a fantastic panel. Welcome one and welcome all to the conversation today. And International People and Culture Week really is a global community of HR practitioners, HR experts, leaders, managers and others committed to developing incredible organizations, high performing organizations, which are underpinned by a focus on people, on a focus on culture, on leadership, on values, a strong sense of purpose as drivers of high performance. And this is a really powerful opportunity for us to come together and learn from each other and learn from colleagues across South America for the work that you're doing to make people and culture, make the people and culture imperative, I should say, come to life. So it's great to be here. And I'd like to go around and start off, if I may, by asking each of our panelists to introduce themselves and talk a bit about your journey into people and culture. Why is it so important to you? What does it mean to you? And so you're a bit of a veteran now of International People and Culture Week, as Jonathan's mentioned. So why don't we start with yourself, Ignacio, and invite you to tell us a little bit about your journey into people and culture and kind of where's the passion come from for you for this approach to driving high performing workplaces?
Okay, thank you, first of all, David and Jonathan, for having me here again. As Jonathan said, I'm leading Korea Biotech's people department, also the impact department. And previously, I worked in the salmon industry in Chile, which is a very important productive industry here. So I've seen culture and performance and people management in general in these two spaces, which I have ended up to, at the end, to see very different approaches to people in very different companies in terms of size, of objectives, of operations, etc. And now currently in Korea Biotech, working a lot on how to align culture with the business strategy. So yeah, I think I can tell you more later, but yeah, a lot of learnings, especially in these last years in Korea Biotech.
Ignacio, that's amazing. Thank you. I mean, I'm always curious to know about aligning culture and strategy because, you know, the old adage of culture eats strategy for breakfast. And I think what I'm hearing you say is maybe that isn't necessarily the right way to think about culture. There's an alignment between culture and strategy. I can't begin the conversation without sort of digging into that a little bit. Does culture eat strategy for breakfast, or is it about alignment between those two?
Well, I like the phrase, but no, actually, I do like it because I can give you like the example of what we're facing in terms of alignment and culture and strategy today in Korea. We have three main businesses here. One is way more mature than the other two. Well, the mature one is the older one. So it's like the big star of Korea. And after that started, we started developing the other two businesses. And I think that our culture started to get too corporate for the kind of culture that we needed. That even though we did have this mature business, which is very successful, we had also these other two that were more in a startup phase. And we realized that our culture was where we felt that we were growing. So we started getting too corporate in terms of policies and sometimes getting into some bureaucracy that we realized it was not helping us to move faster as we needed. And maybe we start losing sometimes that spirit of going fast, of a sense of urgency and agility that we had before. So right now, we're working on that to start like realizing that we need to go back in terms of getting again that spirit of sense of urgency and agility is one of the main objectives that we have in terms of culture this year, because we need to, I mean, in concrete terms, for example, to realize that we don't need perfection. We just need some like the 70% of project stands to start moving faster, and yeah, different things that we're implementing now, so we can allow our teams to get the objectives that they want to get. So in that way, we are aligning culture with our strategy, because our business objectives need for our teams to work in a agile way. So that's the way we're aligning it right now.
Wow, Ignacio, that is so powerful, so interesting as well. I know there's going to be lots of great points that we can discuss in there in more detail. How do we make that happen? How do we bring people with us? How do we bring it to life so it becomes a reality? But I'm hearing that about agility. the opposite, of course, being bureaucracy and over bureaucratization, more policies and processes that some organizations accidentally stumble into. They think we must have a rule for this and a policy for that. I think what you're saying is stripping some of that back and focusing on a people-centered approach to be able to create that agility so people can do their best work in that, Ignacia.
Exactly, yeah.
Wow, thank you. Well, lots of questions. If you've got any questions, by the way, thank you for your dialing into today's International People and Culture Week regional session coming to you from South America. If you've got any questions, thoughts or reflections about how you're making people and culture come to life in your own organization, please do let us know. We'd love to hear from you. How are you doing this in your own organizations? And of course, if there's anything that you hear our speakers reflecting on, please do share what resonates. Is there anything you disagree with? I don't know, but there maybe will be things that you'll hear today that will be enlightening for you or that you're already doing. Please do share those with us. We'd love to hear from you. Joachim, how are you doing?
Doing great. Already a lot of thoughts about what Ignacio was saying, and it was like, should I jump in or wait a little bit? It's really, really fun to start with.
Yeah, and tell us a little bit about yourself, Joachim, and the work that you're doing and your sort of work in the people culture space.
Yeah, so kind of my journey was jumping into a corporate world. I started at Walmart as a very junior recruiter as my first formal job. I did other gigs, obviously, but my formal job was a recruiter on the logistics side of Walmart. So I saw recruiting in volume, massive recruiting, reactive recruiting, but also some projects like about efficiency and how we can be, kind of financial responsibles as well on the last line of recruiting. But then I kind of touched a little bit the roof of changing the world, and Walmart was a 55,000 people company. So I felt like I couldn't move any stones in the way. So I jumped to a very different world that was Corner Shop. Corner Shop was acquired by Uber a couple of years ago. When I joined, we were 90 people between Chile and Mexico. And I left when we were 2,700, and we were the first unicorn in Chile. Wow. So kind of the path or the driver of being at Corner Shop was creating the most successful tech company in the country, and obviously kind of competing with the other unicorns in the region. And the way you do people and culture there is that you become, or you want to become, an expert of momentum, right? You forget about theory, you forget about organizational development and programs and learning and paths and career ladders. Like, you try to forget about that because there's so much momentum on the business side and stress on the product side that if you step in a theoretical way, it's not going to work, because nobody has time for anything that it's meant to be a headache, right? So how you become an expert of momentum, and you come in with all your theory, I know your practice, I know your let's do this better, right? In a leadership level, management level, or coordination or culture, kind of sharing or moments and team building. Like everything was so chaotical, to be honest. And we were a 32 people. No, we are 50 people team divided in 8 countries. So we were really divisionalized, and it was really, really tough. But we kind of became the experts of momentum, when to apply what, where, and how. Performance in the success team, like, it was insane, but we got to the point to understand the KPIs and how our performance into the customers was happening, to really input the performance evaluations and performance management systems. And then I jumped later on to Will the World, which is where I am at right now. I'm really, really happy with more and more issues and problems and challenges, but really, really happy about changing the world. Whenever you find a place where you can push as hard as you're doing in a startup, and it means something. In Corner Shop, it meant to be the best in a sector, right? In a segment of the industry. But here is like, whenever you push, you're changing a little bit the world and how it's lived, right? And here we are 50 people. We have been 50 people for the past 4 years that I have been here. So efficiency is all over the place. We have renewed our way to look at the company many, many times. And I think that's what I learned from Walmart and Corner Shop about leading a company I don't feel like a head of HR. I feel like another founder. I feel like an investor as well on the company, because there's a 360 view that you have to get. 50 people is something that you can track, and you cannot come with a theoretical way to approach and say, hey, yeah, management is done with these 5 variables. No. It's like, what is happening? Track it, build systems, use AI to your will, and try to really have a background of knowledge about who is in your company, what you need to do, and what is the vision, and how you accomplish that. Do you have the talent to do that? Do you have gaps on knowledge? Do you have gaps? And then you have to be super acid and challenge yourself to say, like, we are not prepared to get there in some level, right? It is management, it is leadership, it is structure. Don't get obsessed with the org chart. I don't care about the org chart. I do care, obviously, but don't get obsessed with it. Like, let's not try to build it 2 weeks, each 2 weeks, because it doesn't matter. Like, it functions differently, right? We're changing, and that's where I'm gonna get the word again. Like, being an expert of momentum, I think, is the philosophy that I have kind of learned in the past 9 years working at startups. Is you need to understand where, how, and what to make and generate value towards not just a strategy, be the strategy by looking at the momentum. So that's kind of my background and how I kind of build my vision into people or HR.
Okay, and I think there's a lot that stands out there about the momentum, the sort of efficiency, the agility. I think speaking to some of the points that Ignacio was raising as well. And also that kind of the hyper growth going from 90 to 2,000 people is phenomenal. I think we've sometimes heard in these conversations the concept of HR as a sort of strategic function within the organization, but it hasn't always been easy to understand that, because we see HR as a compliance risk mitigation system, and it sounds like you're fully embedded in the business. And the word that came to mind that I kept thinking in my head as I was listening to you speak was entrepreneurial. And you're describing an entrepreneurial approach or an intrapreneurial approach to business design, business structure, and business organization. Does the word entrepreneurial work for you? Do you use that thinking? Do you see yourself as an entrepreneurial
and that's how I recognize
the organization?
Yeah, and that's how I recognize the head level of my company. Like, I recognize all the heads of each department needs to be entrepreneurial, and they need to push in that way. I'm going to explain like really brief why and why it is so challenging and difficult to have people that are pushing as entrepreneurs, but also how beneficial it is for the company. So I don't sit in the table, and nobody sits in the table as the expert of just one field, and they're going to defend the field to really progress. So I know I'm the most knowledgeable people about HR, policies, culture. I know that because that's why I was hired for, and been here for years, and nobody's gonna fire me right now. I don't know. I don't even know, hopefully. But I sit in the table as an open book to talk about the problems, issues. And then it's the same thing with each one of the departments. And we have been, put in a position where we get asked questions and we need to respond to what's happening. And we're not talking about what is the problem. So we need to grow in marketing campaigns, right? We need to do paid marketing. We need to develop product. We need to create an AI system. If I'm there in the first conversation, I'm founding those conversations, and I can raise my hand and say, like, guys, we're talking about something that nobody knows in the team. And I'm that person that knows what's the knowledge around, right? So I'm not inputting anything that is HR-ish, if you want to call it somehow. I'm putting the knowledge about the organization as a whole, right? So I'm everywhere. I'm in the tech dailies, to the demos, to the UX reviews, to the business recaps, to the weeklies in the operational side. I'm all around, right? And not just because I want to listen to people, which is fine and absolutely lovely to meet everyone in 15 countries, right? But also to understand, like, what are the angles that we're tackling. So when I see the roadmap that we have, and we work with a roadmap, I see exactly what is going on. So when I sit in the table and I get asked something, it's not about HR. It's about viability. It's about functionality. It's about, do we have the capability to hold another initiative? I am that person, right? So then I can apply everything that I know to really make it happen. So how we are going to track this? What is the role? Do we need to change the role? Like, what is the, oh, it's another dependency. We need to change leaders. Oh, but this leader is junior. So this person is senior. This leader is junior. It's not going to work. And then all the waterfall that I can do in HR and systems and compensation, and we can go inside and talk about everything. But at the end of the road, my focus is having people that works as entrepreneurs give so much more to the business as I do, right? But not defending a position as an angle of operations, marketing, product, administration, if you want to call it somehow. Everyone is talking about the business and the problems. And that's so hard because everyone wants to solve them. But it's very, very productive when you're looking at your company problems and your issues as part of the issues that we have, not just marketing issues, product issues. We're going to talk about serious things and we need to solve it. So that's how we work. And that's how I usually lead the conversations in the head level. It's like, hey guys, stop talking about what you have to do. Like, what is the issue? What is the problem that we're solving? Does this matter to the customer that we're serving? Does it matter to the end customer, which is a user or traveler? Like, there's no bullshit about it. Like, there's direct and straight conversations about what we're doing. Is this productive to be discussed or not? Because we're talking about the company. We're not talking about the specific things that are happening in between, right? So I don't know if I answer your question completely, but having entrepreneurs is the best way to root for the vision in a practical way, because people are talking about the business all the time, right?
Okay, I think you absolutely answered the question and then some. If I'm honest with you, I've got a lot more questions I'd love to be asking you, and I think we will come to one of the ones I'm not asking this now because I want to invite Mauricio to be part of the conversation. But one of the points that I think, as I'm listening to you speaking, is each interaction and an issue as it's resolved generates data and insight that helps business growth. And I'd love to have a conversation with you about data, assimilation, aggregation, and using data points to help drive the strategy, which then come back to the point that we were hearing a short while ago around kind of culture, strategic alignment. And we'll get into some points on data because I'm imagining you are privy and having insight into an enormous amount of data points within the organization. But Mauricio, thank you, Joaquin. It's been an absolute pleasure having you here. And Mauricio, how are you?
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me here. Well, let me introduce myself. I am an HR VP, HR advisor, and a corporate headhunter for different clients. So in the beginning of my career, I began working at a startup when I was in my last semesters of college. I'm an organizational psychologist. So, but well, when I started working at Notco, which is a Chilean startup, but it was first starting here in Mexico, at Mexico. So the things we had to do to develop everything about the business was not entirely people related in the people department. So we had to develop everything from compensation packages and rewards, benefits, everything to spoil everyone. As Joaquin said, we had to keep up the momentum of the company, where sales, B2B sales, marketing had everything, where they were making all the money. So we had to spoil them to keep them working at a high pace growth. High pace, so the growth could keep stability, stable pace. So when we first began doing all the policies for the company here in Mexico, we were working on policies based on different countries in South America, Argentina, Chile, Brazil, but they didn't work at all for the Mexican stakeholders. So we began developing new policies, and then I came to the idea that we had to abandon all the DEI part of people. We had to rely on accountability, and we had to rely on WEI, like instead of diversity, trade it to well-being.
Yeah.
So we had to renew everything we knew about. Sorry, I got distracted by the chat. We had to renew everything we knew about the benefits package, the rewards package, everything about working at an office. Like having these perks for the company, like having not having established hourly framework for every day, so that everyone could build their own schedule and that everyone could go to the office dressed as they like. Everyone would be wearing t-shirts. One day someone came into the office with sandals. Everything was great for that to keep up the momentum of the company. But then it came this part of everyone being so free that they didn't perform correctly. Right? So we had to make everyone accountable for their own actions. We had to make everyone accountable for not being able to perform, to not accomplish their KPIs. But this was very difficult because nobody wants to have uncomfortable conversations, right? And mostly the cultural problems are, well, in the start, in my experience, most of the cultural problems are leadership problems. Everyone is just like having these avoiding these uncomfortable conversations with senior stakeholders because no one is taking them accountable for the performance of their teams. So they slow down the company's growth. They slow down like this part of creating the culture for the company, and that was very frustrating at that point. So yeah, well, that was part of my experience working at a startup. Then as of this March, I abandoned the company and I started working as a corporate recruiter for different clients, and also having an HR advisor side gig for different clients. Right now, I'm doing HR advisory for different schools, and it's very like complex, more complex than companies, I guess. But yeah, it's cool. It's great having like these different kinds of experience in my portfolio. So yeah, thanks for having me.
Well, you're very welcome. I think it's a fantastic portfolio. And I'm always curious. I mean, I think the chat that slightly distracted you was the focus from ED&I to WEI and wellbeing, engagement, and to IVE and inclusion. So I'm going to have to come back to that, Maurizio. But before we do that, I was really curious about the concept of extensive freedom and accountability and where the line is drawn, and what, as an HR people leader, you see as being the line. Because I sometimes think about freedom within fences, but where are the fences? How do we create freedoms to enable people to do their best work whilst also ensuring accountability? And to the points that Joaquin was making and Ignacia around alignment to the strategy and the KPIs, what were you able to do through the work you've done in HR to manage those two sometimes competing forces, the demands for accountability from leadership and the demands for autonomy from the workforce?
Well, first of all, prioritizing everything that you have in this. Like Joaquin said, you don't care about the org chart. You care for it at the end of the month, but it's not important in everything you do right now, in everything you're doing in a daily basis. So prioritizing the needs for your stakeholders first, right? So why are they not performing? Why are they having like this sense of huge freedom, not being accountable for their own actions? So you have to put first their sense of, are they feeling right? Are they feeling well in the company? Are they having this sense of belonging, of being aligned with the general values of the company? But I don't like I don't like values of companies, because they're more like, I say this and it's a branding thing, for it's a great place to work because we have these values. I don't believe that companies should have like values in that sense, because it's more like a KPI thing, like in hiring, for example. You have to hire someone that is aligned with the company's values, but most of the hiring team doesn't even know what that means, right? So you have to be more aligned to a behavioral pattern of the person you're hiring than that part, and that is the problem, right? So you have to hire the right people to do the job. You can't just have like this person coming to an interview and saying like, yeah, I have done this and done that, and you're like, oh yeah, so this person has like less experience and doesn't align entirely with the job description that we're looking for, but that person is aligned to the company's values. But you're like, no, you can't just hire someone for being aligned to company values, right? So you have to prioritize company needs, and when someone doesn't perform correctly, you have to rethink the values or the parameters you're hiring with. So this is one part of your question. So first of all, hire the people you need. Try to hire right people for the right jobs, for the right work, right? The second thing, when you already have these stakeholders inside of your company, you can't just be like, well, okay, yeah, well, so they underperformed, so that's it. See you in next performance review. No, you have to hold them accountable for their actions. You have to hold them accountable for what they're doing, also their leadership. Having an uncomfortable conversation, having a feedback, having one-on-ones is very important for company growth. So you have to sit with the senior holder, the senior stakeholders, with the leadership for these people, or even the, I don't know, the director, country manager, general manager, something. Tell them like, hey, this is not working, we're having a problem. Give them the data, because everything now in relating to culture is not taken serious unless you're giving them data.
Maurizio, I'm going to come in there as well, because I think there's some great feedback and some great advice there in terms of that the recruitment, and there's something there about job design. Are organizations doing the job design sufficiently? They know what skills and capabilities that they need in the first place, or are they just using job design and job profiles that are wildly out of date or AI generated, so they don't even know what they're recruiting to? They then use the values in a very shallow way. And I think I love the way that you're aligning values and behaviors to help them develop the capabilities. If it's just values alignment, then it's just a nice story and a connection. If it's alignment around behaviors and mindset and the way that we think, and then attached to that the skills and capabilities that the organization needs, I think is what you were saying, then you've got a potentially very powerful mix, a blend, a connection between the organization and then the talent joining the organization. I think you're more likely to, not only to attract the top talent, but also retain the top talent. I think I'm also hearing you saying that the feedback and the accountability can't just be in a once a year performance review. There's an ongoing process of dialogue, feeding back, feeding forward, and alignment to the KPIs. There's a lot in what you said there, Maurizio. I'm very grateful for that. And I think you've set out quite a lot of questions. I think we said when we were doing the little preliminary meeting here today that we've got a list of pre-prepared questions. Jonathan, I'm putting them to the side. We don't need those. We've got some amazing questions there already that are starting to come through. Really, really powerful. Thank you so much, Maurizio. And Natalia, hi, how are you doing?
Hi, David. Really good. Sorry, at the beginning I had some internet issues, but right now I think you can hear me right?
I can hear you just well. And thanks for being part of the
Perfect.
conversation today, Natalia. We're really pleased to have you join us.
Thank you. I'm so pleased to be here and hear everyone.
Yeah, there's some really great insights, and it'd be good to hear, Natalia, from yourself and your story into the people and culture space, and kind of what your philosophy is around people, culture, and leadership. Natalia, over to you.
Well, thank you, David. Just to give you a little bit of my context and my experience, I am business administrator, which is I think unusual on the HR world. People usually think I'm a psychologist, but I study business administration, and all my career was driven through like leading with people, working with them, leaders. And I started my internship in HR in a pharmaceutical company. Then I moved to talent acquisition into another pharmaceutical company, and in that second pharmaceutical company, I move more into the business, into marketing, sales, and doing that, I discovered I really was driven and motivated by HR. So I moved to an HR consultancy, working in leadership and development. I did my master in this field, and then I moved to the current company that it's called Alcon as HRBP. So I think with this context, I can see a difference from what my peers in this conversation has worked. I have worked in really, I will say, structured and stable companies. And but what I want to say with this is that we'll have the same problems. We all have the same issues as HR, leadership, accountability, partnership, talent management. So I thought we would have like more differences, but actually we need to lead with the same things. I will say that what I have seen in my experience of what is people and culture is in these big companies, we have a lot of what Mauricio was saying about values, organizational mission, organizational purpose, and that is given to us from like really, really up in the organizational uh, chart in other countries, in other even continents, and they give us that to us, and that's what we need to translate in our daily basis. So I think that is what is people and culture, how we can make our values and mission and visions that we need to have into more informal aspects, into how we communicate, how we collaborate, how we interact in the daily basis, how we gain the trust between teams. So I will say that that is what I see. That is culture and people in an organizational environment, and I will say that what has been a key in my role in the aspect that Joaquin was telling, that I want to be a key part of discussions and conversation. Doesn't matter which team, which leader, which decisions are making, which conflict, which problem we're talking, it's about trust. I think that if the leaders and the people, they trust in our work and they trust in our advice, it doesn't matter which aspect, our work is going to be seen in the daily basis interaction. So that's why um, that's I think that is the key of the younger people that want to work in HR, and it's involved really communicate with the leaders, be a real partnership. That's why our role is called business partners, because that's where we start to really collaborate and really, I would say, like, fix the puzzle pieces. That's our role, how we actually frame the puzzle in the organization.
Wow. Natalia, I love the way you presented that as well. I think it'd be very compelling as well for anyone who's listening to you speaking, whatever the role, to be able to kind of buy into and be part of the cultural transformation that you're describing. You know, I'm working, I think everyone's spoken about leadership, and I know we'll speak more about leadership through the conversation, but and Natalia, you mentioned leadership quite a lot in the way that you were talking there, and I just wonder, you know, how do you bring your leaders with you? How do you get them onto the same page that you're on, that share your passion? And do you ever come up against leaders who don't buy into this, who don't share your passion? And if so, how do you get them onto the same page? But how do you really engage your leadership community in the conversations that you're having?
Well, I think that was one of the biggest challenges I had here in Alcon when I started, like, almost 3 years ago. Because we were in the change management, in the change process of the role of HR. I think HR was seen as a well-being, a birthday parties, end-year parties, like those type of things, like perks, and making the leaders understand that that role was not what we were hired for was kind of difficult, but actually, as Joaquin said, like, being involved in the conversation, not being there as like, yeah, we need to have HR here in the table because yes, but actually because we were giving value to them. We were analyzing other stuff that they were not seeing. We were asking the correct questions. If this team is really junior, we need to hire a senior leadership. If this team is senior enough, we can hire a more junior leader, like those type of reflections and analysis, giving that to them. And as I said, gaining the trust of what we are saying is actually very important. That's the way we start, like, the process and the journey of bringing them to our good side, I will say. And sometimes they don't agree with us, and that is normal. They don't agree with us, and we need to, like, just communicate what we are thinking, the risks, the advice, but at the end, the decision is from their side. And they need to be accountable from that decision with our analysis, with our advices. And we are also trying to make them more involved in HR processes. They are leaders of the HR processes. They are leader of the performance program. They are leaders of the selection process. Like, we help them, we consult them, but at the end, they are leaders also of their process, because they are leaders of sales, they are leaders of their marketing strategy, they are leaders of presenting to their manager if they are growing or they are not growing in X or Y product line. But actually, they also are leaders of the process that involve their people. So that's how we have done this job since 3 years ago, or even more, because I'll come 3 years ago, but I think it has happened for, I think, almost 5 years, like, to make them more involved and also make us more involved in the business. So I think it's a side to side work. We as HR more involved in the business, but also there as leader more involved in HR processes.
Natalia, it's fantastic to hear you say that. I think it's really interesting. In my work on people and culture, I've often sort of described the life cycle of employees moving from a utilitarian. We sort of purchase labor and knowledge from the employee as a utility. Then we thought about the employee as an asset. But of course, that's a great way to describe it. But we depreciate assets on the balance sheet and leave them as empty husks. We then thought about the concept of the employee as a stakeholder. So they've got a stake and a voice in the organization. And then I moved the dial forward, thinking about the employee as a consumer. So the employee is a consumer of systems and processes. And you talked about leadership of systems and processes. Have you ever thought about, or what your reflections be? And I'd open this up to colleagues here. If we think about the relationship and the emerging relationship between the leadership population and the workforce, the concept of the employee as a consumer of culture, systems, and processes rewires how our leaders function. So there's more of a dialogue and a sense of equity in the relationship to be able to create systems which are then consumed by our workforce. And I guess that changes the dial about how we engage, how we respond, how we listen, and how we activate that relationship. Natalia, I saw you smiling there. Did that resonate? And what thoughts did you have about that concept of the consumer employee?
Yes, actually, I think that what you just said, like though that typical phrase of employees is our biggest asset, that is not that anymore. Actually, we we me and the leaders, the senior leaders, the middle managers, we are always thinking on what we can give to the employees. Like not what they can give to us, but the other way around, because actually they are consuming all our resources, time, effort, benefits, even money, because for no one is a secret that the personal cost is the most cost, like the highest cost in the company. And I will say that every day I'm thinking, okay, what else I can give to them? And it's not about benefits, it's not about perks, it's about time, development, effort, communication, like all other aspects. Because as you say, they are actually consuming all of our resources in order to do and to be more comfortable doing their job.
Wow. Natalia, thank you so much. So let's just throw the question out there, colleagues, if I may, around the relationship between leaders and the workforce. And I guess if we think about the people function, some people maybe describe it in a slightly pejorative way, the legacy HR function as a long arm of management and of leadership, and in essence protecting leadership and management. But here we're talking about a very different form of HR. We're talking about the people function as an enabler, as a facilitator, as a shaper, as an entrepreneur, as a strategic oracle within the organization, in many respects trying to predict the future. So let's talk about leadership. How do you influence leadership who see sometimes accountability is delivered by do what I say, don't do what I do? Concept of accountability through let me show you, let me help you, let me encourage you, and recognizing that you're consuming my leadership. That requires a big shift. Let's open up a conversation about leadership. Does anyone want to, that particular point? Because I think everyone's discussed leadership here today.
Yeah, I'm desperately wanting to jump in.
Jump in by all means, please.
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing that I wanted to say, and there's like 4 or 5 visions of how to do people or HR. There's no silver bullet for everyone that is listening. Like there's no silver bullet. Some of you guys might think it's a structure, perks, benefits, compensation. Like there's no silver bullets. But my view of how to approach the organization is look at what you're doing right and acknowledge what you're not doing correctly. That's something that you can actually see, right? If I'm a startup, right? I'm in the travel tech startup industry, right? We're a tiny segment of the industries, like maybe fintech are huge compared to us, right? I don't have so many competitors, and I know I'm not a top payer, right? I know that, right? But I know in some of the roles that I have, I'm paying beyond the average. So I know in my structure where I'm safe in terms of compensations, and I know where I have some other risks. So jumping to the leadership conversation, leaders needs to know where we are at with compensations, with the structure, with perks, with everything. They need to understand, as I understand paid marketing for segmented campaigns for people with disabilities that are not senior, and I know exactly what is engagement for that. They need to understand what is the average of payment to each one of the roles they have, right? Where we can bid a little bit more. What's the range that I'm hiring for? As Mauricio said, like what is the talent, engagement that I'm going to have with my offerings, right? So, and there's where you find the first wall of our roles is that you're going to be talking with people. that have their own emotions, that are leading people. Sometimes they don't know how to do it. Sometimes they don't even know how to lead themselves, which is absolutely fine because it happens to us in our personal lives or professional lives, on even sports. But they are accountable of the company's success. So the main problem that I find whenever I'm working with leadership is to separate two things: the executionary part of being a leader, right? You need to keep working. You need to keep putting your hands into business, right? To really understand the granular things that are happening in your area or department or sector, right? But the other part is like development of how you're doing that. Being a leader is tough. Being a leader is hard. Talking to people is hard. Marisa said, like, nobody wants to talk hard because you have always avoid that on the workspace because you don't want to fight anybody, right? And we're not talking about just fighting. Is how you can engage conversation that is going to be more productive. So everything that I'm giving you in terms of this person, role, compensations, benefits, and everything is not enough for the person. And I know that. I know engagement, trends. I know because I have a one-on-one performance feedback on the last semester, a one-on-one with you specifically. We know it's not okay. So how you're gonna have the conversation, I need to prepare you, and that's where I put two things on the table: technical things that the leaders need to. When I say technical, I'm talking about feedback strategies, narrative, hold, silence, and the other part of that is what are the main perks or skills that this leader has. Tone of voice, how joyful they are, their style of being just themselves, right? And I try to match those two things and prepare them in that way. And one thing that I try to do a lot on the technical part of my job whenever I'm approaching to leader is actually I need to own the OS of the leader. The OS is the operation system. Like how do they talk? The weeklies, the monthlies, like how they interact. So I can jump in and say like, hey, your system is not working. Why? Your engagement is dropping. Your people are not comfortable. Your metrics are not being hit. So how do we change the way you're working as a leader? Not because I know a better way to be a leader in your position. It's like your system is not working. So how I can help you engage other way to do it, right?
Okay, let me come into that. I think it's a really interesting point. And Ignacio, I'd be really keen to hear your thoughts as well, because you talked about the strategy. But I just want to come in, Maurizio, there, because I think what I'm hearing you saying, Joaquin, is you're using a sort of philosophical or values-based approach in terms of assessing and understanding the concept of leadership and then helping to course correct leadership. But Maurizio, you talked a little bit about values not having a value per se as part of the conversation. I just was curious maybe to just dive into that little bit, because it is an interesting point about how do we hold leaders to account, and do the values, if they're meaningful, provide an accountability structure in the way I think we're hearing to help course correct our leaders' behaviors. And I wonder, does that help, Maurizio, add value to values, or do you still maintain the values don't have a value in favor of other aspects of the organization? Maurizio, over to you. And then Ignacio, I'm going to come to you, if I may, and get your thoughts on leadership and system strategy development.
So this is difficult because values do have a value sometimes, but it depends on the institution and the stakeholder that you're talking about, because new talent doesn't often align with the values of the company, because values are very difficult because everyone has their ethic agenda. So everyone is different. Everyone has a different culture. Everyone has like a national culture, right? Not an organizational culture. So if you're working for an Indian company, a Japanese company, and you're in Mexico, in Colombia, in Chile, in the UK, you're not having like a value match for the organizational values, right? So what you're having like trouble as a company, where you're having trouble as a company, is how to fit this mindset on your stakeholders, right? So this doesn't necessarily have to come from values. It has to come from within each stakeholder, and this is very difficult because you're gonna have to remold, to break the mold of everything you knew about onboarding processes, of hiring processes.
Yeah.
And this part is, like it's very difficult to do as a company that has already set all these processes. So
Yeah.
what I propose, I don't know if it's like a good alternative for this problem, is to change values for different kinds of things, different types of things, like maybe some behaviors, institutional behaviors, and different I can only think about behaviors right now, but
it's key. It's key, Marcia. I think the reason I think it's important is because people experience behavior, whether it's observed or whether it's not observed, and that kind of fosters and forges and impacts on their experience of work. And then those behaviors aggregate to create the climate of our teams, the way we connect. And of course, that then aggregates to form the culture of our organization. So I think you're absolutely dead right to focus on behaviors, because behaviors are the defining characteristic of an organizational culture, a flourishing transformational culture where the behaviors are aligned and respectful and supportive and engender a high performance workplace, or behaviors which are perhaps disrespectful and promote disharmony and rudeness and disrespect and conflictual, and that then creates more of a sort of toxic culture, or I call it culture shock. So I think you're dead. I'm going to come back to that in a moment, because it's important that we focus on shaping behaviors. But Ignacio, I wanted to come, if I can, and zoom. I'm going to zoom right up to the boardroom, if I may now, and think about something that you were saying when you introduced yourself, and that kind of relationship between the people plan, the strategic drivers of the organization, and thinking about the role that our leaders play in shaping a positive workplace culture through that sort of systems and strategy lens, and what work that you're doing as a people leaders help foster that, so that the strategy, because we all know some strategies are about shareholder value, return on investment for the institutional investors, the private equity or whatever, and that's the strategic driver. I think what I was hearing you saying, Ignacio, and others, is actually we have to have people embedded in that strategic narrative. And I just wonder how you're doing that, and what kind of impact that's having.
Yeah, okay. So what we have been lately thinking in terms of how to connect leaders to the things that we want to move in terms of culture, performance, etc. I think of three things. The first one is to make them part of the problem. I think it's important to involve them from the beginning. When you involve them in the end of the cycle or the communication, you're just giving them like instructions. It's harder to get them accountable of whatever you want to do. So not only involve them in the communication side at the beginning of whatever you want to do, but also include their opinions, their perspectives, because at the end you want to do something that would help them. So you need to make sure from the beginning that whatever that you're thinking, the solution that you're trying to deliver, it's connecting with their issues. And for that, you need to involve them from the beginning. I would say that as a first point. The second one, I think it's very important to make it easier for them. In my experiences, sometimes we have failed in that part, doing things that may be too hard. Not hard, but too complex, too much information, and you like forget sometimes that they have a lot of other stuff to do. So now we're working in like doing everything more in the flow of work. Like if we want them to give more feedback, make it easy for them. Try to use nudges, like to give them the information they need just in the time that they need it. So I think that makes it more likely for them to behave the way that you have all aligned, because they may agree with some things, but there's a big gap between understanding the importance of something and behaving that way. So I think you need to make it really easy for them. And also because not all leaders have a lot of experience managing people. So you also need to do it easy especially for the ones that are more new in the role. And that makes me think of the third and last point, that also not every leader really wants, or every manager really wants to be a leader. And I think we also need to think as managerial positions and leadership positions, not as the only way of like growing in a company, because we sometimes also make the mistake of promoting someone as the only way that that person wants to grow because he or she is having a great performance, whatever. But you realize that that person really don't want to have all the things that a real manager and a leadership position requires. So I think we also need to evolve to more specialized positions, because maybe you want to grow in more a technical thing, not a managerial position. So you also make sure that way that the managers that you have want to have or want to grow in the managerial skills, and they're not there because that's the only way that they can grow in the company.
Wow, that's fantastic. I mean, taking each of those points in turn, I'm going to start with the last one there, because it really throws up some interesting points around developing our people, creating aspiring leaders programs. So I mean, my view on leadership is we're all leaders. And actually the hierarchy is an artificial construct which gives competitive advantage to certain people who have leadership capabilities and gives them a competitive advantage. In some respects, it's an unhelpful construct, because if we're all leaders, and you're recognizing, Ignacio, that actually to generate really meaningful work, you may not want to move up the hierarchy, you might want to move across the system. That then throws up some really interesting points around learning and development, developing the capabilities, but also Mauricio and others in talent acquisition. Is how do we acquire? Are we acquiring against Hokin's perspective around entrepreneurship, agility, mobility within the system, or are we recruiting people to be able to move up a hierarchy and take on a leadership role? So that last point, in many respects, inverted the pyramid and shook it up because it requires us to think very, very differently about talent acquisition and talent retention. You talked about making it easier, giving people real-time information. You're talking about behavioral science, nudging people, using those skills and tactics to help give our leaders the tools they need in the moment. I kept thinking of the word coaching as a capability to help bring that to life for our leaders. And you talked about making them part of the problem. I love that. You're not the problem. You're part of the problem to help solve the problem. And you talked about then involving them and including them. And your whole ethos was one of inclusion and engagement and empowerment. And all of those things then I think aligned to a really powerful rethink and a reset of what it means to be a leader driving cultural transformation. So I think that was, so to me, did I capture that? Have I missed anything? Was there anything in there that resonated with you as I summarized it back that made you think about? Are you bringing that to life?
No, actually, I'm impressed with the resume that you just made about what I said. I think you captured all my ideas, and yeah, that's what we're now. A lot of also what I said before about doing whatever we want to do in the flow of work. We also like make the mistakes too many times of taking people, our leaders, like out of their job. To make them align with the initiatives we wanted to push, but now we are pushing our initiatives in their daily jobs so that we can make it easier for everyone to adopt it. Whatever, like you can apply that in different scenarios or different projects.
Wow, and it's happening in real time, and I love that. It's a real time, everyday BAU conversation. We know BAU, business as usual, can get in the way of good cultural change, but I think you're using business as usual as a construct to support consistent, ongoing and perpetual cultural transformation. Natalia, can I come over to you? So you're coming at HR through the sort of business operations lens, business administration lens, and seeing how the system works. One of the things that I find in the system, Natalia, and I don't know what your thoughts are on this, is sometimes we embed injustice and unfairness into the system. And what I mean by that is our policies and processes are often very binary, reductive, and centered around blame and punishment. And that's grievance, discipline, performance, whistleblowing. There's a lot of policies all cut from a similar cloth that do the same thing. I just wonder, as someone who works through the systems lens and business operations, have you developed, I should say, any thinking around justice within the system? And how do you create a mechanism that delivers justice for people, which is about driving learning and insight and supporting the creation of a positive culture? Because my experience of most justice systems they're the antithesis of a good culture. They drive trauma and harm hurt and fear and anxiety, which are not things that we want to have. They don't drive the kind of behaviours Mauricio has been talking about. Natalia, over to you for thoughts around that, if you've given it any thought indeed.
Yes, David, actually, I think that to create a culture that actually give justice in relation to, I would say, disciplinary or development aspects that you need to change, we need to base on second opportunities. I think that's the it sounds super like nice and whatever, but I think of course it depends on what the person needs to improve or the disciplinary action that this employee did. We need to believe that this person, if it's something behavioral or performance, that this person has the ability to change. So all
Yeah.
the the culture in Alcon right now is okay. If this person, for example, has a bad performance, but it's 1 year, maybe a second year, okay, we can do a performance improvement plan. We can give the second opportunity. We can accompany this person and not just like, okay, go and we hire someone new. Or for example, it's something more related to behaviors. And actually I'm gonna link this with Mauricio, a perspective about values and behaviors. I don't know, something behavioral or something behavioral in leadership that impacts negative in the team. Okay, we can do a mentoring, a coaching, a performance improvement plan, and actually give the second opportunity in this case, because we need to development is a company, is making metrics, is giving exposure, and we need as company give that to the employee that needs to actually change something. Of course, if it's something more hard, I would say we have, of course, politics locally, especially because we need to, um, I will say, line this with the local laws in order to see how we handle in the more equity and just and yeah, with justice for everyone. In the Colombian aspect, they like make us follow some certain steps. If it's something more, I will say hard, that doesn't requires a development or a performance improvement plan, but always into giving the person the second opportunity and the right to speak and to explain what happened actually. So as Mauricio was telling, I think right now, super curious, we are changing Alcon values. So we are in the like in the peak moment on okay, we have four new values, how we're gonna translate this to people, like how we're gonna make these values behaviors, because at the end of the year, in our performance reviews, we include these behaviors. So it's not just the KPIs in relation to sales, in relation to a strategy, in relation to customer success, but also in how you did that. So we mix a lot, not only like the hard stuff of the business, but also how you did that, and the how is the values that we need to translate them into behaviors. So everything start to mix, and actually many of the conversation at the end of the year is like, okay, maybe this person is really good in sales, that the how is not good because this value is not aligned with the company because this behavior. So we are gonna do a performance improvement plan. That is the way we're gonna make justice and equity to everyone. So everything is start to mix and in what we have taught here.
And I love that. I love the way, because clearly there's complexity in there, but I love the way you brought that sort of human-centered lens to that complexity, and I think it cuts through the complexity in a really powerful way. And I think I love the phrase that you phrased there, the ability to change. It talks to me about this sort of concept called unconditional positive regard. People don't show up to do a bad job. People bring their strengths. I think when people managers go to HR about an underperforming employee, it's often late. They've done a lot of tutting and finger pointing or ignoring it, and they go to HR and say, right, this person needs to be exited from my team, or we need to move them into another team. And unfortunately, some of the policies and processes have kind of almost reinforced that, or we've fallen down rabbit holes, and that's happened. I think what you're talking about is pushing back, and there's a constant pushback in the system to reflect back in What are the behaviors? What do we need? Let's focus on what people can do and that people can change and people are able to learn. It's not putting them on a performance improvement plan. It's about building in constant dialogue. And this really, again, that complexity speaks about individual behaviors and interactions right the way to the stuff that Ignacio was talking about in terms of whole systems strategy thinking. Then they link and the people function sits within those. And Mauricio, I was really curious to know, as an org psychologist, thinking about sort of psychology and our brains, our mind, our hearts, our guts, the way that we connect. What learnings do you bring from organizational psychology that helps us to think about this stuff? Because it feels very much around emotions and feelings and behaviors as much as it does about system, strategy, and structure.
Well, the main thing is like the core role for every HRBP and for every people and culture expert, right? So you have to prepare your partners for change. Everything you do is preparing them for change. So you have to facilitate this impact for every stakeholder in the company, right? So you have to maybe have transparency in every decision-making process, in every like leadership meeting that you're having like this waterfall of information to the team, so there is transparency and they can, like make every decision better, the best decisions possible, right? So this is like I think the most important thing for every HRBP and every people, every person that works in the people department, right? So you have to prepare everyone in the company for change. You have to be able to enable change also, right?
I'm going to come in next. I just want to kind of, because I think you just said something really, really, really important. I'm conscious of time. I've just seen the message from Jonathan. I thought we'd just started. It turns out that we've been chatting for well over an hour. But one of the things I think that's really important is preparing people for change. And yes, I'm a big fan of the Bridges change model and thinking of how do we adapt to change and how do we build a level of readiness to change and that kind of preparing people for change. I think what we sometimes see in our organizations is there's constant change, but then when people fail to adapt or they fail to lean into it or they make mistakes or dare I say it, they fail, failure, we crush them and we apply rigid policies and processes and then we apply the bureaucracy. What I think I'm hearing you say, Mauricio, and the conversation is said we need to be much more agile and adaptive and preparing people for change, not crushing them when they don't do the right thing or where they're resistant to change or they somehow perceive to sabotage it. But I'm going to come over to Joaquin now for the last point, and then I'm going to ask every one of you just for one piece of advice for the listeners of today's International People and Culture Week conversation, coming from South America. So much insight and so much learning. But the entrepreneur, I'm going to come back to this, Joaquin, because I can't ignore this because this was such a powerful introduction. But the entrepreneur is just a whirlwind of change and constantly looking to do things differently, to do things better, to constantly change things. And I just wonder if you look at that entrepreneurship or entrepreneurship, of course, which is then building that into the organization, how do you moderate that so you're not scaring everyone? But you're not just scaring everybody and you haven't got Mauricio and the team kind of hurriedly behind you kind of managing and mopping up from your entrepreneurship. How do you manage it so that people are with you in the change process and they're not finding it scary or overwhelming or just too much? I can't keep up.
Yeah, it's thank you for the question, because I think here is where we start like shooting the hot takes and the bombs. Just by the way in my case, the way I'm trying to perform this role of being the head of HR, staff, co-CEO, and sometimes therapist, and sometimes a coaching person, like while I'm doing all of that, I'm part of the risk. And it's a really humbling experience when you're part of those decisions. So even though I have 7 or 8 people sitting in the table as entrepreneurial humans, they are afraid of risk,
Mm-hmm.
to take conversations, to make some decisions. So whenever you put yourself into the risk and say like, hey, let's make this decision together. It's not about a marketing. Let's just push this. And I'll be right there with you with all of the things that I have said before, and people here have said, like, with all the systems, with all the resources, I'll be right next to you doing exactly what you want to do, because you are thriving to do it, right? And I trust you. And that's how you moderate. It's like being humble enough to say, I think we need to team up. Whenever you team up with your entrepreneurial colleagues, it's like, yeah, let's just innovate. Let's just push, right? And it's a very humbling experience for both of us. Like, the one that is making the decision knows that they don't have everything to go through that decision, maybe in a human parallel side of the business, and I'd be right next to that person to really not just coach, but also make the decisions together. That's one thing. And based on what Natalia and Ignacio said, I think the bridge is, and my hot take here is, the more invisible I am, the better the work I'm doing.
I love that.
Right? Because one thing is having the values in front and preaching with the values, and the other part is like the daily engine of having these conversations. So neither of those are wrong or right as an absolute truth. But whenever you make the values be part of the performance, not on the performance review, but this job is done with this stuff. If you're not considering these variables, it is not correct, because you're not going to accomplish the goals, right? When you put it like just in the core of every single position that you have, it's like there's no success if there's no passion on this road, because you're going to be climbing the Everest, right? That's just a joke, but the main thing about like moderating entrepreneurs inside your organization, or people that wants to just push forward as passion. Imagine we're working towards people with disabilities and trying to make accessible destinations, right? So I have 50 passionate people pushing, at 100%, 120%. How do you moderate that energy? Because everything is so frustrating. The industry doesn't want to make changes. We need to sell like insanely so we can get purchased. And we know it's the correct thing to do, but what's going on? We're not viral. Why will the word is not viral if it's the right thing to do? And that's super frustrating. And that's where this being part of the risk and having resilience over challenges is a transversal thing that we have built over time. It's like, it doesn't matter the challenge. It doesn't matter the issue. If we are co-creating, co-making decisions, and co-taking risks, that's how you engage people towards challenges. Obviously, we have this handicap, like upon other companies, that we have a really humanized purpose, which is a really great tool, but it's your worst weapon at the end of the day. If you stop trusting in that and you don't develop it through time, it disappears. And whenever purpose disappears, people just leave. There's no other thing to hang. We're not top payers. We're not top benefits. We have not the best leaders in the world. But what we do have is we trust you. We think about you. We think about your work. We try to make it meaningful. We try to make your value visible each time. So answering your question, I guess the main thing that dysfunction or people is, the less visible I am is where I work the most, right? Because I don't need to be that light of values. I don't need to be that light of HR. I need to be right next to you on your arm, working towards your challenges.
Jochen, I'm going to come in there. I think it's just, I think, we've often talked on these events, and I've run podcasts and we've had webinars, Jonathan, and we've often heard about the concept of HR's desire to be at the table, have the seat at the table. And we've often then rewired that and thought about the concept of HR, the people function becomes the table. What I love about you've taken that to the next level, and you've said I can optimize my impact by removing myself from the table to an extent, and that my impact is optimized in absentia in the room. And that speaks to me about true empowerment and truly enabling our organizations to function whilst I am then removed from that. And that talks about powerful drivers of success within the organization. There aren't easy answers. I think there is no silver bullet. I think as you spoke to some time ago, there is no simple, easy answer, but that gives us something all to aspire to, in jargon terms, a North Star for us to work to. No longer a North Star of having a seat at the strategic table and giving up everything and becoming something that we don't want to be, but actually getting it and then removing ourselves from it. Joachim, that was a fantastic endpoint for yourself. Thank you very much. I really enjoyed that. Natalia, I'm going to come to you, if I may, and invite you to wrap up. Any final thoughts, advice or guidance that you would share with anyone who's listening to today's International People and Culture Week session from the South Americas?
Well, thank you, David. Well, I will say that something that will summarize what Mauricio, Joaquin, and Ignacia and I said is, and I mentioned before, our job is try to gain a lot of information, insights, analyze it, and at the end, try to, as I said before, like join the pieces of the puzzle. You know, like everything is related. Talent management, the talent development, who is moving out of the company, talent acquisition, in compensation. So we need to have all of that, even if we think they are not related, and start to with the leaderships, start to joining the puzzles at the end. And as Joaquin said, we don't need to be in the spotlight at the end. If the puzzle is the more tight and in the right structure, our job is gonna be what the leaders and the company want from our side. So just know the people, gain the insights, talk with everyone, make the correct questions, analyze that, join the points, and make the right structure to the right issues and process that the company needs in the minute at the moment.
Wow. What a clear message to leaders. And I saw your face lighting up as you're saying it. It's so joyful to hear you speak about it. I can see you are. And also that's the experience of our people when they experience that level of leadership, Natalia. Thank you so much for that compelling argument for more engaging, curious, connected, interconnected leadership. Thank you, Natalia. And Mauricio, to you, if I may. Final thoughts.
Take risks. Right, so that's my advice for everyone that is like in a junior position listening, or a mid-senior position. Just take risks, be brave, have those uncomfortable conversations. Don't be afraid of failure. Just be yourself, be true to yourself, be true to whatever you think is right for the company, for you, and for your partners. And don't be afraid. Success is right around the corner. So take risks most of all. Yeah.
You talk about high growth mindset or fixed mindset to move into a high growth mindset. So I know you know a bit about Joaquin in terms of the entrepreneurship. That is about building a high growth mindset. And the thing I think that people say as well, Mauricio, is that conversation, that thing, it's never as bad as I think it's going to be up here. And my sleepless nights, my worry, my anxiety, my fear, my trepidation, it's always worse than the actual conversation. But we put it off for days, weeks, and in some cases, years, or for our entire life. So I think you've set out the measure: be brave, be true to yourself, take risks, be strong, be courageous, and success is just around the corner. You can't argue with that. I can see a poster with that on it right now in my office. I love that, Mauricio. Thank you very much. Ignacio, you've got the final word today at today's International People and Culture Week workshop. Over to you for the final thoughts.
Lately, I've been obsessed with change. I feel like everything is changing so fast that I feel my final reflection will be to be questioning everything all the time, like questioning what we do. Maybe the main question for me, at least currently, because maybe tomorrow it's going to be a different one. But today I'm always questioning myself, if we are making the impact that we want to make, And the way that you want to get there, it's going to be changing all the time. And you need to be, I think, all these kind of conversations, talking to people, reading up stuff, going to conferences, looking at your own business and your own teams, because everything is information and everything is changing so fast that we need to be asking ourselves questions very constantly, and be open to change the way that we are doing things, because everything is evolving very fast.
Absolutely, and just I love that sort of checking in with myself, that constant change and questioning myself on what am I doing. And also I think one of the powerful questions is, how am I feeling right now, and how are you feeling right now? And I think the more that we can connect with our own emotions and the emotions of others to build those strong connections, then it unifies us. And in a world which feels very divided and binary and very oppositional and very much about blaming of other and sort of negative attributes of leadership that we see espoused as being the best forms of leadership, that sense of questioning and searching ourselves and self-awareness, I think really grounds us as leaders, both in our own sense of our own self and our connections with other people. Ignacio, what a powerful way to end today's session. So Natalia, thank you so much. Mauricia, Joaquin, Ignacia, thank you so much. And Jonathan, what a fantastic conversation. I think we knew it was going to be good, Jonathan, but did you realize it was going to be that good?
No, it's been like a masterclass more than a 5.
It really has. I've gone through pages. I mean, I can't read any of my own writing, I hasten to say, but I've got pages and pages of notes there, and I hope people who are listening on LinkedIn or on YouTube are likewise. It has, I agree with you, a real masterclass.
Yeah, I mean, we've been speaking to people from different regions, and as I think Natalia was saying that she thought it might be different, but it's all the same. But I think the nuances of the stories, what you just spoke about, I think something that really stuck with me is, making it easy for the leaders. I think Ignacio, you spoke about that. Making it easy, taking the information to them so that they can start making those changes. I think that's going to stick with me. And there's so much of good content that's come out of this. But yeah, as David said, thank you so much for joining us on this panel. For those of you watching us live, once again, do share your thoughts and join the PCI. As I said, it's free, and it's a global hub for people, culture, and leadership. All you got to do is go to peopleprofessionals.org.
But nothing in life is free, Jonathan. Surely it must be a trick.
It's your time. You've got to give us your time.
And don't forget, subscribe to the People Leader magazine. The latest edition, as Jonathan said, is just out. The May and June edition. It's a fantastic read. Case studies. This is the chief executive of the Financial Times. We've run some incredible stories with case studies from chief people officers and senior leaders from across the world. And you've just heard from some more now. Jonathan, thank you. Colleagues, thank you. What a wonderful conversation. Thanks everyone for being part of today's show. Please do drop into the comments box anything that you've learned, anything that you'll take away. I'm sure there'll be lots, so please put it into a nice running order. We will all watch it, and I'm sure we'll all be there commenting and providing our own insights. But for now, Jonathan, as always, at PCI HQ in Delhi, thank you for all of your work, and to the fantastic speakers and guests today, thank you for sharing your insights and wisdom so generously. And to everyone at the People and Culture Institute, thanks for being part of one of the fastest growing centres for people and culture and leadership transformation. I think, is it in the world? I don't know. I'll say it. I'm here in the room. I think it's in the world, but we'll see. But thanks for being part of the conversation, and we'll see you next time. Thanks, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.